that's a good lead into the next question that they provided us. Specifically, what would you do to restore the fiscal stability of Pennsylvania?
Well, the simple answer, quite frankly, is to vote against the budget. You know, we've had in our recent history in Pennsylvania budget impasses in 1978 before I got there, in 1991 before I got there, and 7 in a row under Governor Rendell. I mean, it seems to me that if you take a look at that analysis rather quickly, you can realize if there's a problem, it's probably Governor Rendell and his negotiating tactics. Last year, you know, you all read about a 101-day delay in getting a budget concluded. Governor Rendell essentially had the Democrats not even introduce a budget until well after the constitutional deadline of June 30th. The Senate was so frustrated back in early May, they passed Senate Bill 850, and they brought it over, and the Democrats in the House just tried to tear. They immediately started having hearings, not on their own budget proposal, which they just wouldn't put in writing, but on Senate Bill 850 saying, oh my God, it cut too much money. But, I mean, I'll segue back a few months. In the beginning of February of 2009, the governor said, things are looking bad. It's not just Pennsylvania. He likes to share the, you know, when there's blame, he always says it's all over. All the states are having problems. He told us we were going to lose $1.6 billion. We're going to be short $1.6 billion in revenue for fiscal year 08-09. It was worse than that. It was 3.3. But in the face of losing what he thought was going to be $1.6 billion, the last 2 or 3 paragraphs of his budget address proposed that we take what was then a $28.3 billion budget, and in the face of those shortfalls, raise it to $29 billion. We didn't. We brought it down to 27.9. We cut $400 million off. And that's all. But, and we're in the same situation now. So my guess is we're going to do 8 years in a row under Rendell, and 8 years of not having a budget on time.
The state constitution requires a balanced budget, does it not?
Yes.
So how do we go about complying with that? Will you comply with that?
Oh, I'll comply with it. You know, but I don't control when the Democrats put the majority in power. Controls the flow of legislation. I can't vote on a bill that's not presented to the House, you know, the House chamber. And the Democrats last year didn't do that. They, like I said, they picked apart Senate Bill 850. They didn't bring in their own until I think it finally did it like July 20th or something, somewhere around there. You know, finally there were some of the blue dog Democrats, the ones who didn't like all the spending. You know, they're from small towns in small, you know, rural areas out in the center part of the state and the western part of the state. And they didn't want to vote for the kind of spending increases that the governor was after, and he just was not going to relent. He doesn't relent. He just, you know, keeps pushing and holding people's feet to the fire, hoping that he'll get what he wants, and he wants additional spending. I can only do it. One point I would like to make: when he took office 7 years ago, as a state, we spent $20 billion. And back then, that was in Tom Ridge's time, and we actually balanced the budget and lived within our means. But he's taken us from $20 billion. If he gets his way this year, he'll have $29 billion. If you think about it, and he would have had us at $29 billion last year if he had his choice. That's a 45% increase in state spending during his term. I mean, you know, when they call him, you know, tax and spend Eddie, he really is tax and spend Eddie. He's been asking for tax increases from the very beginning. What he does, when he first, some of you might remember, when he first was running against Mike Fisher back in 2002, I think, or 2002. He was so far ahead by mid-October in the polls because he's a popular guy. He's on TV and he does the Eagles talks and all that kind of stuff. He was so far ahead that he said, "I think we might need a tax increase." You know, and true to his word, his first budget address, he asked for a tax increase. Some of you will probably remember the numbers from 2.8% in Pennsylvania. He wanted to go to 3.75. Right? The problem was Chester County residents would have sent to Harrisburg $60 million more money than our schools would have gotten back in his proposed distribution formula. Montgomery County lost $82 million. Philadelphia gained about $150 million. So, you know, that's what he does. He wants, I mean, be careful. Sometimes people say, you know, we ought to send more money into Harrisburg, do a big broad-based taxing, have it come to Harrisburg, and we'll distribute it fairly. When he distributes it, his idea of fair is Philadelphia gets the biggest share.
Let me get to the next question,
Sure.
because we're going to go through these quick, and we'll give you the rest of them.
I'm sorry, you know,
It's fine.
I speak fast, but I don't want to short shrift the answer either.
10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, what does it signify to you and the role of government, essentially?
Well, I mean, I think that's the one, if I remember right, it's the one that says that whatever the states have not given to the people, to the United States government under the Constitution is reserved to the states.
Correct.
As a practical matter, that's been made a farce of by the Congress, because what we get, and I'll give you an example of that, a couple of years ago, back in the Clinton administration, the Congress said, the Clinton administration was pushing it, and I think it's probably a good idea, by the way, for blood alcohol testing in terms of drunk driving cases. They wanted the blood alcohol level rate lowered, rather, from 0.10, 0.10 down to 0.8. And like I said, that's a good idea, I think. We don't want drunk drivers on the road. They kill our kids and they cause all kind of problems for us. But when we got it from the federal government, it says you will reduce it to 0.08, or you're going to lose $400 million of federal highway funding. And it's like, when you think about it, what has happened is the Congress takes our money that we send in their federal income taxes and then dictates the terms on which they'll give it back to us. And that makes no sense. It's not consistent with the Constitution. But, you know, we can, you can argue about that all night, but the feds have the money, and if we want to say, well, we're just not going to, what are we going to do? Say we're going to keep the blood alcohol limit higher so that drunk drivers can stay on the roads? I mean, we don't want to do that. So that what Congress has gotten very good at trying to manipulate us by saying, we got the money, here's the terms on which we'll give it back.
How about that in the context of healthcare mandates? Is there such a thing? In other words, the federal government
Well, the federal,
says
yeah.
the state needs to offer healthcare, right? Is there such a relationship there coming down the pipe?
Well, yeah, but whenever the federal government has the money and then starts to dictate, what we have to do, what hoops we have to jump over, or jump through, what hurdles we have to get over in order to get our money back, yeah, there's obviously a relationship. I mean, I've followed the federal health care debate. Quite frankly, we've got a system that operates pretty well for 90% of America, and maybe even 95%. And there is a segment that is not insured and probably is not likely to be insured unless we make some changes. But frankly, if I had something that was working at a 95% level, I'd try and fix the 5%. I wouldn't trash the whole system and try and restructure it. But that's not what's being presented in Washington, because Obama wants to redefine it, redesign the program.
That's all we're going to have time for, I think. We'll get the rest of these to you to submit to the group director.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. By the way, while we were talking, I glanced back and I saw my cousin in the back of the room. So hi, Dolores. How are you doing? Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.